Good day, everyone. My name is Ron Alasco from International Trade Council. Thank you for attending today's educational session. Before we start, I'll just do a quick technical check. If you can, guys, can hear the audio, can you please type in yes in the chat box? And if you can also see the PowerPoint presentation right now. All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. So today's webinar is an hour, 45 minutes for the presentation, and the rest is for the Q&A. So if you have any questions on the duration of the presentation, please feel free to type in your question here in the chat box or in the Q&A box. And after the presentation, our speaker will answer your questions. Our topic for today's educational session is Transcreation in Business 2024 Framework to Win Diverse Markets and Demographics. Our speaker for today is Chitra Parnas Shinha, founder of Leacock.xyz. Today's focus is demystifying transcreation, understanding cultural nuances, creating content that converts, and from the local insights to global impact. Now, let's hear directly from our esteemed speaker who will elaborate the topic. Please join me in welcoming Tritaparna Sinha. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ron, for the introduction. Just to check, I'm clearly audible, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the introduction and thank you so much for attending today's webinar. And I realize my name is particularly tough to pronounce, so call me Chitra, not a problem. Anyways, moving on. Today we are here to discuss about transcreation in business, and we will go through a framework with which we can improve how we show up in our own business processes. So, what is transcreation? So, today we are running global businesses, right? All of us. We are reaching out to various clients on a daily basis, whether you are selling a service or a product. We are not limited by our own geographical presence. So, I am based out of India, but my business is spread in the United States and the United Kingdom. So, global businesses has redefined how we communicate with people. It has created opportunities, but it has created barriers as well. So when you see brands, products, or services around us, and specifically when we talk of big brands, the brands that we interact with on a daily basis, almost every one of them make use of this technique called transcreation to reach out to the audiences, their key audiences. Why do they do that? And we will come to that in a minute. So in our businesses, what we are essentially trying to do, we are trying to connect with people and sell. To put it very bluntly, we are trying to sell. So transcreation becomes this important tool which helps you to become better, to put in quotes, salesperson, so that your product and service reaches to a wider market. So, as I said, for example, brands around us, for example, IKEA, or you have KFC, you have McDonald's, you have Coca Cola. So, these are global brands, and these global brands are present in a lot of countries. But if you notice how, let's say, a brand like Coca Cola would advertise or market their service, market their product in USA, it's very different from how they sell their product in India. Similarly, IKEA is a global business, but how they proposition their furniture business in other countries is very different from how they do it in India. So, this process where you are adapting a message, it could be an advertising message, it could be a marketing message, it could be as simple as an email. So, it is the process where you are adapting your message from one language to another while trying to maintain the intent, style, and tone of the message that you're trying to convey. And I know here it says that transcreation is all about adapting a message from one language to another, but essentially it also works in a similar language, in the same language. So today we are communicating via English, and we know even in English there are variations. English, how I'm speaking as a non-native speaker, is very different from someone, let's say a native speaker in the US or a native speaker in the United Kingdom would be speaking and conveying the same message. So, for example, when I'm reaching out to clients in the United States, how I communicate in my written message is very different than how I would, let's say, email a potential client in Germany. Anyway, so this is transcreation is where you are adapting your message, where you are the intent of the message remains the same, but that is transferred in a different language. So, transcreation is the art of combining translation and creative communications. It's not translation. I would like to make it very clear that it is not translation where you are just linguistically converting, transferring one message to another. No, it is a it is a process where you are capturing the essence of the original message and then adapting it to a new source language while conveying the same message and keeping certain cultural nuances in mind. And to explain further, I have spoken about a lot of big brands who use a transcreation for their global businesses. And to niche it down further, if you have played video games, so video games, how they are produced and how they are marketed in various countries is very different. It is the same video game, but the language and the way of expression will be different for different countries. So, video games is one area where transcreation is used on a wider scale. For example, we have all heard of Japanese animations. So, the same Japanese animations are transcreated and then distributed in a different market, for example, the United States. Again, to give a very common example, I'm not sure who my audience is right now. I guess someone would be from India as well. The character of Superman, Spider-Man, is very popular, right? But the Spider-Man, the concept, how we see the movie, it's in its original production is very different from what we see in India because that is culturally adapted to suit our sensibilities. So even in movies, when we are watching movies, when you see the subtitles, so often you see a very word by word translation of in the subtitles, but often when movie productions have a better budget, then they use transcreation. So the storyline is the same, but how it appears to viewers like us and many others, it's very different. Again, voiceover, a lot of people, a lot of businesses use voiceover services to reach out to various markets. So again, these voiceover services define how the same message is, same marketing message or advertising message is conveyed to various diverse markets. So before we move on to the framework, it is a 7-step framework that we use to transcreate, to begin the transcreate process. So in what niches is it just transcreation for marketing or advertising? No, it is not. Transcreation can be, let's say if you're writing newsletters, transcreation is important. Let's say if you're writing emails, you are doing cold emails and trying to reach out to clients from various markets, but it is not working. So one of the things that you need to look into is whether you are able to connect with the receiver in the language that they understand, even if it's English. So transcription is required there. For example, if you're into the customer service business and you're not getting response, or customers are still feeling frustrated even after you think that you have solved the problem, but you're still unable to. So it is a language, not just a language barrier, but about understanding and adapting to a language that your customers understand. So it right now it might sound a bit complicated, but people who are into global communications, they use transcreation to reach out to various business verticals. So framework, what is the process? What is the transcreation process? It is a structured approach, as you can see on the screen, that helps that works as a guide to adapt a message from one language to another for various markets. So, for example, let's say if you are a B2B or a B2C product into the product business, and you are trying to reach out to various markets. There's the Russian market, let's say there is the British market, there's the Indian market. You have to adapt your approach. Otherwise, you are not going to receive the kind of results that you are expecting to. So, as I said, it is a seven-step framework that we use to transcreate a message and then distribute. The first step, of course, is the market's research. It has to be used in any kind of product or service that you're trying to sell. Here, we need to research the target market's demographics and the cultural nuances and preferences. This includes language, the age, the gender, location, socio-economic status, and more. So this is a very basic first step for any kind of market expansion. We are anyway doing this, but now when we do this, keep in mind the kind of language that your target audience is expecting to receive from you, so that it has adequate impact and you receive some kind of responses. So that becomes a part of your market research as well. So for example, I was watching this podcast about someone who is trying to establish their business in India, and he's running the operations out of India. And he has moved his entire operations from another country to India because he wants to build his business in India and understand the market. Because unless you understand the market, you will be unable to expand your business, be it any country that you want. So, the first step in the process is market research, with which we are building an audience profile. And we are also understanding that how this audience profile wants to be communicated to. It is not about how you want to communicate, it is about how your audience wants to be communicated to. That is very crucial to understand. The second one is message analysis. As I said, whether you want to blast cold mails, or whether you want to send personalized messages, or whether you want to run an ad campaign, whatever it is, or you want subscribers to your newsletters. Again, what is the message that you're trying to convey and the emotions that you're trying to evoke? Because ultimately, whatever we are doing, we are trying to sell, we are trying to reach out to another human, right? So what is the kind of emotion that you want to evoke when your audience is reading your message? So this is where we analyze what is the action that we want the audience to take. What is the, like, if do we want the audience to just buy our products, or do we want our audience to engage with us? What is it that you're hoping to achieve? So this is where we analyze the message. And it is very important to understand the cultural context of the audience that you're trying to reach. So in transcreation, when we do training, we often put up examples of companies unwittingly blundering in how they reach out to wider markets. So examples like McDonald's and KFC, even in the tagline. So the tagline, we are aware of the tagline, but when they launched in a market like China, they had to change their tagline because the original tagline would not have conveyed the same meaning. So this is where the cultural context comes into play, and how the message that you're trying to convey might be perceived in different cultures. So first is market research, and the second one is a message analysis. Third one is an extended version of the second point, which is cultural nuances, where we identify the cultural elements that may impact the message, such as I'll give a quick tip. If you're trying to globally communicate, don't use humor or idioms unless you are very sure that your intended audience can actually understand. Sometimes and often it falls flat because your audience does not have the same contextual understanding of where you are coming from. So cultural elements that may impact is like idioms, humor, symbols, and taboos. Often it is not possible for everyone to know, every company to be aware about the culture of the entire world, of every region, of every community. So this is why you need to deep dive into research and then find out an appropriate way to reach out to your audience. As I said, this step requires a deep understanding of both the source and the target cultures. If you are, let's say, if you're planning a big marketing campaign or an advertising campaign, look into this. Look into the audience segmentation, the kind of people you're trying to reach out to. Go over your messages hundreds of times to ensure that the impact is what you want it to be, and there should not be any kind of fallouts just because we were not aware about certain aspects of a certain culture. So, cultural nuances. So, the first three steps is more of a preparatory and a research step. When we move on to the actual phase of transcreation, so by this time you should have a clear understanding. Again, I'm repeating a lot, but it is very important to understand that you should have a very good understanding of your audience and how that audience wants to connect with you. With this two important factors, now you are able to adapt your message in the target language. So again, the target language could be English to English, but how we understand the same language is different. So you have to ensure that the meaning and the emotion and the intent stays intact, but you are adapting that message, that original message, while respecting the cultural nuances and preferences of your target audience. So the most of the time that is spent is on the transcreation, actual content creation process. Again, for example, if you are a B2B product, or if you're selling a SaaS product, and your a big chunk of your market is, let's say in Bangladesh or any South Asian region, you have to think whether the approach you're taking for your SaaS product, apart from other factors like pricing, that's one of the main factors. But keeping those aside, you have to keep it in mind that the content that you're putting up online, or trying to reach out to audiences, whether it suits the sensibilities and understanding of, let's say, the South Asian region. So that is core transcreation process that we are talking about here. So once these four steps are done, you have your message ready. It could be as simple as an email. We move on to the brand alignment. So as I said in the beginning, a tagline of a company like McDonald's or a KFC, it remained the same, but it was modified and transcreated, not just translated, to a very big market, which was the Chinese market. But, and it's important, but it was still aligned to the brand that was expanding to a new market. The intent of the tagline was transcreated into new words, but the purpose of the tagline remained the same. So, two different ways of communication, but the intent remains the same. That is what brand alignment is. It should not come across as a different brand altogether. So, as I say here, with brand alignment, you have to ensure that the transcreated message aligns with the existing values, voice, and tone of the brand. So, if a brand has a very playful approach and you want to reach out to the French market, you have to transcreate and ensure that the playful approach of a brand still remains, but to the French audience, it comes across in a similar fashion, but in words, in culture that they are used to and they can understand. So, this is brand alignment. Next is, now that you have all the reserves ready, you have all the messages ready, it is time where we start testing the market to see if our transcreated message is actually working or not. And a few ways to test the impact of our transcreated message is in the kind of results that you start to receive. For example, if you want to promote a newsletter and if you see increase in subscribers from a particular demographic, you know that your transcreated message is working. Similarly, if you are sending out cold emails to, let's say, the Swedish audience, and you see people are responding to your cold messages, it means that yes, okay, your transcreated effort is working. Similarly, if you are selling a product in a south asian country or any other country, and you see a rise in the number of purchases, then your brand value is definitely being established, and your marketing approach, the transcreated marketing approach, is definitely working. So, market testing is basically where we are sharing, we are distributing the message to our target audience in order to check influence. And based on the feedback, these days there are various processes where we can receive feedback, and based on the feedback, we can actually see if our effort is giving the expected result or not. And you can use that feedback to further refine the messages. And for a market testing, I always recommend that use an omni-channel approach. Not don't be fixated to a very particular marketing channel. It's always better to spread it out and follow omni-channel approach so that you can collect various kinds of feedback and improve your product or service proposition. So we have covered brand alignment. We are using transcreated message to ensure that the brand alignment remains the same. And with that, we are moving on to the market testing phase, where we are trying to see if the message is making sense. To put it very bluntly, is making sense to our target audience or not. And the most important step, as I said, the seventh one, is scaling and ROI. So you can start with a small sample size, whatever product or service that you're trying to promote for a particular audience. You can start small. And when you see it working, you're getting feedback, you're getting subscribers, you're getting increase in your revenue. Take it as a base and then start scaling it. Monitor the performance, and then you can start scaling it. So if you have a budget and you want to put it in marketing, don't put it all at once. Take a small batch, test it out, and then you can scale it up. So communications, I would like to state here that communications transcreation is often a process where it is very difficult to put an ROI. You can't say that, okay, I've invested so much, and I need a 3x or a 4x return on that. Is very fluid. You can't really put a number on that. But there are certain checks and balances that we use in transcreation to see actually if we are getting any kind of benefit or not. And based on how you are scaling, it can have an improvement on your return ROI, return on investment, and accordingly you keep on going. So one has to be prepared to adapt and refine the messages based on the feedback, as I said before. And most importantly, it is not a one-time activity. In the slide, I mentioned that your transcreated efforts, it needs to keep on moving to capture the changing cultural trends. Otherwise, like if you do a research now and you want to still use it 2 years down the line, it may not again work because the culture has changed in the next 2 years. So transcreation is an important marketing advertising activity which is often used by brands to reach out to diverse markets, speak in a language that they understand while keeping their brand proposition intact. This is how you start making connections, and this is how you start growing in diverse markets. And it's a continuous work in progress. So yes, I had a small presentation today. Rather than this being a monologue, I wanted it to be an um, interactive session. I can't see any chats or questions right now until I stop sharing my screen. So thank you so much for attending today, and I can be reached on the email ID that you see here, hello@chitraparnasinha.com. That's the domain name. And I'll stop here. Give me a moment.
Okay, thank you for that informative presentation. Now it's time to open the floor for questions from our audience. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A and chat box. While we are waiting for questions, I'll just make a few announcements. So for those audience right now who are not yet a member of International Trade Council, just please feel free to reach out to me, and we're offering free membership. Webinar. By the way, this webinar is recorded, and if you would like to replay, you can just go to our YouTube channel. It should be uploaded in our channel in the next few days. Lastly, you will receive a certificate of participation for attending today's webinar. So just please check your email. So we are seeing some questions here. If you can go to the Q&A box, I'll just project the questions one by one. This is the first question.
Okay, which is the better option, buying or engage? Shushant, thank you so much for asking that. In my mind, both are important. And I know this is not a direct answer that you might be expecting, but it really depends on the product or service that you're trying to sell. So, for example, if it is a mass market product, and let's say it is something that is available on Amazon, I would focus on the buying intent because I want people to buy. It's a mass market product. But if it is a service based business, I would personally favor engaging with my prospective clients first and then getting into a negotiation or a business mode. So building a relationship is important, and it really depends on what is the intent that you're trying to fulfill. If you're selling a mass market product, obviously you can send a lot of settle, you can do an email blast to lakhs of people and people might buy. But in services, it is better to engage first and then go into a business deal mode.
Question.
Okay, why people bring ambiguity in dialogue sometimes? If you are still here, can you elaborate on that question?
All right, let's move on to the next question. Which is better, indoors, written or verbal communication?
All are important. Sorry for that. All are important. By endorsement, I mean that people who are endorsing your work, right? So endorsements are important, written or verbal communications. See, when you are engaging in a global space, it is important to have good written and verbal communication skills. Otherwise, there is always going to be a conflict, even when the intent is right. Even when, let's say, I am reaching out to you with the correct intent, but if I'm unable to put it into a good writing, or if I'm unable to communicate it well verbally, the person at the other end, let's say you, will not be able to understand. And this is a skill which needs to be upskilled a lot of times. It's not a skill that you learn once and then forget about it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next question. I will read the question here. As it needs a deep understanding of the culture, accent, lifestyle, social cultural background of the target demographics, do you think it can be done without involving native experts? Can be done with the same team for every target market?
No, to be very candid with my response, no, it cannot be done with the same team for every target market. You need native experts in such teams. For example, for business that I do, and I offer transcreation as a service, as a training for companies and for one-on-one training. So my specialization is this South Asian market and the American market, because these are two places where I run my businesses, and I have been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. So yes, I have a good understanding, good background of these two markets. But let's say now, if you want my advice on the Spanish market, I'm not the best person for it. Then you need native experts, and also native language experts. They are going to be better transcreators than anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Do you have an example? do you have any example of transcreation gone wrong, and how would you do it differently?
Okay, so not my personal example, but during my presentation, I was talking about, I think, McDonald trying to launch in China. So initially, McDonald or KFC, I am forgetting that. So either of them, they were trying to launch in China, and they translated, not transcreated. They translated how they were marketing in the US. They translated and tried to launch in China, and that fell flat because the tagline "finger licking good," it is understood on a different level by the United States market, but that same tagline was misunderstood massively with the Chinese audiences. So once they understood that, they changed the tagline, keeping the intent. So it is important to focus on the intent intact, and used Chinese native expertise to transcreate and appeal to the diverse Chinese market.
Thank you. Does design a play a sorry? Does design play a role in transcreation like language as well?
By design, what do you mean? Do you mean a website design like UX and UI design? If you are here, if you could elaborate further on that.
All right, let's go back on that later. I think this is the one that we skipped a while ago. In certain cases, people say that may have to follow the process discreetly.
Okay, I need
This
to go back to the question. Just a
The first
moment.
question was why people bring ambiguity in dialogue sometimes.
Okay, in my experience, what I understand here is that you are talking about ambiguity in communications, and that
Possibly.
you have, yeah, that you have to follow processes discreetly. Okay, Shoshant, I would need more context on this, but what I can say from my experience and my understanding of what you are trying to say is ambiguous communication often happens unintentionally. Either that, or ambiguity happens when people don't share the information that you need to have to do your work, to follow a process that is expected out of you, but you don't know why you have to follow the process. So there the ambiguity might arise, but I realize that I don't please understand that I don't have the contextual understanding of the situation that you're trying to explain. You can reach out to me later and we can discuss more.
Thank you. So we're still open for questions. So if you have more questions, just please feel free to type in your questions here in the Q&A box or in the chat box. I don't see any questions yet, but I'll give time for our speaker to add more information about the presentation, and if she would like to also share her email address here in the chat box, so that if anyone would like to copy the email address, she will be able to you'll be able guys to reach out to her directly.
Yeah, I'll just do that. I've shared my email ID. Please feel free to drop an email anytime. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Let me just share that. My LinkedIn handle is this. I have been auto logged out by LinkedIn, so I couldn't give you the URL, but this is my LinkedIn handle. I can be reached there. So if we have no further questions, do we have any, Ron?
I don't see any other questions here, so I'll give the floor to you right now to give your final message or any information you would like to add before we end the presentation today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending this short talk. It is always about how we can be effective in a small span of time rather than utilizing the entire duration. So, with that, I can give you 27 minutes back. And I hope this was an interesting educational session for you. Transcription is a wide field, it can't be encapsulated into certain number of slides. It's a cultural study basically, where it's a technique that businesses have realized that it's important to reach out to diverse markets. You can't simply translate or copy paste your marketing strategies into all the diverse markets that you're reaching out to. So, with that, I can end
I'm sorry to
my talk
interrupt.
here.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. We still have one question here, so maybe we can answer this one. So,
Okay.
transcreation is primarily dependent on copy content language. Does design in terms of visual plays a big role too?
Absolutely, Aditya. It does play a big role. So, for example, if you have seen websites where there's a slight button on the right side which says that you can change the language, so that is one indication that the that business is trying to appeal to various demographics and various languages. So visuals definitely play a big part. For example, you see a lot of products with special design icons. Design. I'm assuming that we both are in India, so design icons. So that is more relatable to us than, let's say, icons which are relevant to a different audience in the United Kingdom. So that won't be relatable to us. And to give another example, have you ever seen websites which is based out of India, but the photos that you see on that website, there are no Indians there. So it's a problem. So this is not just about the written language. This is also about if you're doing video marketing, this is about if you're into designing. It is just not dependent on the content, the written content. It is dependent on all the other segments that we use, strategies we use to reach out to different audiences.
All right, thank you for that answer. So you can continue your final message before we end the webinar.
Yeah, so final message. Thank you guys for coming today, and I can be reached out on the email ID. If anyone is interested to continue discussion on email or on LinkedIn, I would be very happy to. Thank you once again.
All right, thank you very much. As we conclude, I want to thank our speaker for illuminating the vital role of transcreation in global communication. To our attendees, remember it's not just about translation, but connecting with diverse audiences. Let's take this understanding forward to drive meaningful interaction and global impact. Thank you all for joining us today, and until next time, keep embracing cultural diversity and communication. Thank you and have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next webinar.